the youth pastor, he said all the games we played, all the songs I chose, those are out the window. They're not going to connect to anything. And I haven't talked about this in a long time. I might actually cry. But he basically said that he really felt like there was someone there struggling who needed to hear an entirely different message. I really haven't talked about this in years.
Wow.
And so he started talking about the exponentially increasing teen suicide rates. Okay.
Okay. Take your time.
Well, I love to cry. I just don't like talk very clearly when I'm crying, which will not be effective for a podcast. Like, this bitch loves to cry. So crying is great, but trying to talk when you're crying, not so good. And then just went on just talking about that and talking about how even if you don't feel like you have a purpose and you don't understand why you're here, everything you're struggling, everything you're learning, if you can get through it, it will give you a story that you can use to help other people. And that is something that I carried with me my entire fucking life.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
I'm Casey.
And we are entering graduation season. And do you have to go to any graduation party? I feel like we're moving past that point where we're going to graduation parties. But you see the signs everywhere. I can't drive to work without seeing, like, do people live in your area where they put like signs in their yard with pictures of their kids on it? And it's like, senior class of whatever. Do you see that?
No, honestly,
No.
Not at all. But I don't really live around any people. So,
yeah.
And I don't think I know anybody that's under 28.
Yeah. You don't. Well, so like my neighbor, his kids are graduating high school. My foster son graduated last year. So he's got friends who are graduating. But yeah, I just like it's everywhere. Everyone's graduating, and that's also summer, so everyone's getting married who's planning on getting married. But whenever like graduation season comes around, I think of like when you did go to graduations or when you had your graduation. So you graduated from a Christian school. Do you remember like being in a Christian world? I feel like graduation speeches, commencement speeches for high school graduations are like way different than like, you know, public school where it's just like, go seize life by the balls, go to college, have a good time, but don't have too good a time. It's just like real shitty, like, but par for the course encouragement. But with like Christian I feel like I went to my fair share of like Christian type graduation events. So like homeschooled graduations were insane. I don't know. I could speak to that a little bit, but do you remember like was there anything notable about your graduation or whoever spoke at your high school graduation?
No, not really. I mean, our senior year, like at our school, if you were accelerated Christian education, like you had so few tangible tasks that you were supposed to do other than like finish your stupid workbooks. But like everybody had to give a speech their senior year. Like that was a part of your like 12th grade English paces. And you could kind of do it on whatever. And I gave my speech on why Calvinism was wrong.
Yeah.
Solely because one of my best friends and his family were all Calvinists. And so he just got to sit there in the audience and listen to me going like, God so loved the world and blah, blah. Just like a total jerk off.
Do you remember any of your main points other than God so loved the world?
Oh, I think I used all the same cherry-picked verses that like counteract all the Calvinist cherry-picked verses.
Man, I had a homeschool, like, so a church in my area would do like a graduation ceremony for homeschool kids. So they got the whole like walk experience. So you got the fucking gowns and hats and shit like that. I don't remember what mine was. I remember not caring. I remember not being interested in even being part of it because there was a bunch of other homeschooled kids there, and it's like, I don't know any of you motherfuckers. That's why we're homeschooled. I knew a couple because they were from my church, but overall, I was just like, what? Like, part of graduation's cool because you're there with your class and people you know. It's like a big to do when you're just like showing up to a church with like 80 people you've never met before. You're like, why the fuck are we doing this? It doesn't make me feel good about myself. It actually makes me feel worse about my entire experience, especially when you see the caliber of people you're graduating with. You're like, I didn't know they made such high-waisted pants for boys, and I didn't know you could tuck in your t-shirt so far and so tight. And it's like, when you're tucking in graphics tees to the point where the graphic is unrecognizable, you're just like, you're overdoing the tuck.
Yeah, it's like your 2004 graphics tee is tucked in so far that it just says like, I can only please one person a day. Tomorrow's not your.
Yeah. It's like they're tucked in so tight you can only see like the top of Goku's hair. That's it.
It just says, give me your underscore instead of tots.
But so I don't remember the speech at mine, but I remember going to a friend's graduation, he was a year behind me, and my whole family went for this graduation ceremony at their church, and the guy gave a whole speech on the title for it was "Be Losers for Christ," and
oh my god,
yeah, dude.
Oh,
and yeah, it's as bad as it's
fuck,
like,
that sucks. Holy shit, he sucks so bad.
And it's just about how like Christ went out and gave himself for this, and the Christians have always been known as like, the whole persecution complex of like giving it all up for God. It's like, so lose for God, be losers for God. Everyone wants you to make something of yourself, be your own. They want build a name for yourself. We don't want that. We're Christians. We want to build a name for Jesus, and we want to do that at a cost so be losers for Christ. And it's like, I remember at that time being like, that wasn't bad. And my brother being at a point in his trajectory who is like, that fucking sucked. Unapologetically being like, that was a bad message. That wasn't a terrible speech.
It's like the exact reason that you're standing in a crowd of people just like you, and yet you feel like totally alone and separate. It's like, I'm supposed to take pride in the fact that I have no connection to anyone, but I mostly just hate myself. I go to a mall and I'm surrounded by teens my age and just feel like a caged animal.
God, dude, I don't remember if you can stop me if I've shared this story before, but in one of my youth ministry classes that I took when I was at Liberty, one of the assignments was to just go sit at the mall and people watch, so you could just really. It's like,
What?
This guy, Rich Brown, shout out Rich Brown. Rich Brown fucking sucked. This guy was the worst. This guy was so dumb. He thought he came up with the term Christianese.
Amazing.
He in class, he's like, and this is like, I've heard other people say this, but like, I mean, this is something I came up with, and you guys might have heard it before, but I came up with the term. I coined this phrase here. You might have heard people say they're speaking in Christianese. I'm like, bitch, you did not make that up. Like, everyone knows you didn't make that up. But he would be like, his assignment was you had to go and sit in the mall and watch kids like a pervert. And the whole assignment was to write about like what you really saw. And he goes, people are always surprised, but every time I read people's papers on this, it's like they always talk, they're surprised. We're just so used to living in this world that you forget and you don't realize how lost people are until you really sit there and are just like analyzing it for the sake of that, to see what was really going on. And of course he gets that. That's what I said. Oh my God, these kids walked into Hot Topic and they were like arms around each other. I just didn't even realize how, sexualized our culture was. Like seeing these people this guy is just jerking himself off to the assignments that he gives these, because it's like self-fulfilling. Like you're grading people based on how traumatized they are by watching a 14-year-old go into Aeropostale. It's like it's fine. It's fucking fine, dude. You're just old and out of touch.
Dude, I love I love the thought of just like arguing over something, like founding something so trivial. It's like Rick Warren was the Edison to his Tesla. It's like, I said it first. I imagine there's been several fights over like who was the first to say the joke, like Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was a classic. I remember the first time I heard that.
Somebody's been really angry over the fact that someone else used that at some point. Guaranteed. Dude, he's a joke thief.
Copyright. Someone just tries to they file cease and desists with they scrub the internet for any sermon where someone says Adam and Steve and then send cease and desist letters.
Freaking Mike Warnke needs to write his own material, bro.
Another graduation, my sister, when she graduated, we were all homeschooled. So another homeschool graduation at the same church that mine was at. And I was, all right, when she graduated, I'm like 7.5 years older than her. So I was in she was 18. No, it was like 23, 24, right? Just at that point where I had been shifting out of I was still, pretty traditionally Christian, but out of evangelicalism at that point. And that was kind of post me finding Shane Claiborne's Irresistible Revolution, and it's starting me on a whole new there's a different way to be Christian. You don't have to just be a conservative neocon. And who I don't know who gave this speech. It was just some suit and tie motherfucker who was pretty young, and the entire thing was about how it's necessary for young Christian men and women to get involved in government because everything's going so south, and that they need Christian leadership in government, and they need Christians to infiltrate the government so that way they can make legislation that would honor God. It was just a Christian nationalist speech, and it was so brazen and obvious that I feel like more people than I would have expected felt kind of icky about it. I don't know where they found this guy. It was just I don't know. It was just just some regular we had all these political debate team type stuff that you could join. I used to do Teen Pact. I've mentioned that a little bit, where you just go and hang out at the state capitol for a week and learn all about how awful government is without Christianity. And I don't know, it was probably someone from one of these organizations that we were always part of. But God, man, listening to this guy tell a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds that the most important thing they could do is to just get into government to affect legislative change. You're just this is pretty gross.
Government's the highest calling. Public service.
Yeah.
Politics is
from within a church. Oh, just goofy. I find I miss it. I would like to go see some more. I should just start looking for. I bet that same church still does homeschool graduations.
Oh,
I should
probably.
go just for something to talk about here.
Well,
Yes, we can go ahead and introduce our guest here. We're keeping this one short. We talked to our guest for quite a while. She was wonderful. Her name's Kelsey Galuzzo, but most of you would better know her by her, I guess you'd call it a stage name of Jetty Bones. She's kind of like an indie pop artist. She, well, like the pandemic did to a lot of artists, it made some shifts in or had a big impact on the touring schedule and album releases, things like that. But we get into the long and short of it during our conversation. But she was kind of just on the up and up, and then pandemic hit, some mental health crises arrive, and she goes through it. We get into some of the details. I don't want to share even here because the conversation was really fantastic. We were very thankful for her to take the time to talk to us. But she, in 2023, she'll refer to this as the pandemos throughout the conversation. It was, she put out like kind of a roughly recorded album, as in demos. And it was titled Songs I Wrote Instead of Killing Myself. And really one of the songs kind of started out as a suicide letter note, and then it turned into a full album. And we get into kind of some of her whole roller coaster of an experience throughout our conversation, throughout her career, throughout mental health diagnoses and getting the help that she needs. And her story is fascinating. It was super. She's somebody we wanted to have on a while ago, and it finally worked out now that we were able to do this. And it worked out perfectly because even since the first time we reached out, there's been so much that's happened. So she was a great guest, and I hope you all enjoy our conversation with Kelsey. Hey, everybody. We are back with our guest, Kelsey Galuzzo, a.k.a. Jetty Bones. What's up, Kelsey?
Not much. Just hanging out in my basement laundry room, watching a blanket dry. Just standard stuff.
That's what it's doing. I wasn't sure if that was a background choice or just like but it's practical and serves a purpose.
Yes, if I wanted to do a background, I promise aesthetically it would be a lot more pleasing than that.
A cloud? Is that clouds?
I think it's like a wash, like tie-dye, like a cold dyed blanket, but it's really soft, so I don't want to put it in the dryer. I've maintained its softness for like 3 years now, and I'm dedicated to the cause, so it's hanging up to dry.
this is the problem with falling in love with something made of fabric, is that it's very hard to take care of.
I feel like so my wife and I'm a progressive man, so I do laundry too. So but we always have these like articles of clothing that we don't want to dry, but we don't always like call that out when it goes in the laundry. And usually, but it's like always just a ticking time bomb on like when someone's going to dry someone else's shirt and ruin their day. And that did happen to me this week. And that's why I'm thinking about it. So that shirt will not fit properly.
That is
ever again. Cause I don't plan on.
That's why I do the laundry.
Yeah. I only like to talk about losing weight so I can pretend there's a reason I haven't thrown out my old clothes.
Yeah, that's like classic band shirt problem. It's like we went to the show and you're like, probably should get a large. I don't need I'll get a medium. And then you get home and it's like a long sports bra. And then you like make yourself wear it somewhere. And then the whole time you're like doing the belly shirt tug like an old guy.
You need a TC Tugger at that point.
TC Tuggers.
Yes.
That's one that didn't stick with me until I realized I was pulling my shirt out of my stomach. It made so much sense after that.
Well, that's because it's not a joke, okay? It's not like the Snuggie. Like you don't do pub crawls in them like the Snuggie. It's not a joke. TC Tuggers is serious.
I need them. You put a ripcord on the front of mine.
Well, Kelsey,
sorry, go ahead.
No, if you were gonna stay on the I think you should leave topic, I'm willing to stay
No,
there for a second.
I was just gonna say that the idea of having like a ripcord with like inflatable clothes is something I've always really enjoyed and thought about. And that TV series Dave, the like last season had an episode where he has like a ripcord inflatable suit, and it was just very pleasing to me. It was totally irrelevant. My brain just, you said ripcord and I was like, inflatable clothes, man.
They do
We
make
need 'em.
those for motorcycle stuff. Like motorcycle racers, they have like impact triggered inflatable suits that they wear, so it like holds your head in place if you crash and you don't like tumble yourself
airbag.
into oblivion. Exactly.
Nice. Okay, sorry. We can continue as the actual subject matter of this podcast, unless we're trying to start a new one where we just reference television series, which would be fine with me as well.
That is kind of what we do. So we try to stay on topic. Our listeners are very aware of the fact that that's not really how things always go, but we'll bring it back here and there. We are interested in your story because I feel like even so, before we even hit record, you mentioned doing Zoom church during like the pandemic and stuff, and I was doing the same thing.
Mhm.
And the fact that you still were at that point, I'm like, oh, that triggered that there's a lot more through line here than maybe I even thought. I didn't.
Mhm.
I believe. How do you feel about your Wikipedia page? Do you read it ever?
Okay. I actually had this thing a couple, maybe like 2 months ago, where out of curiosity, I hadn't looked at it since like 2019. So I decided I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to look at my Wikipedia page. So as I was scrolling through it, there's a lot of stuff I saw, and I'm clinically diagnosed with OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So sometimes if something is incorrect, I need it to be correct. And it's a personality disorder because sometimes I'm an asshole, and the social awareness that what I'm doing or how much stress I'm putting on it, I can't pick up the social cues that it's upsetting other people. I make sure people in my life know that right away. I'm not trying to be an asshole. So if I am, just say, hey, maybe take a breather and let us know more of what you're thinking. But I was looking at my Wikipedia page, kept seeing things. I was like, that is simply incorrect. That's not true. And also a lot of things that I had done myself where credit was being attributed to other people, especially when it came to writing the music in certain parts of records. So I edited my own Wikipedia page.
Nice.
Not
Did it
all
stick?
of it.
Did it stick?
Not
though?
all. I think so. I didn't go back. Sorry, I hit my microphone. I didn't go back and check because I only wanted to edit the things that were actually and factually inaccurate. Everything else I just wanted to word differently because I am a writer, but I refrained. I just needed people to know that I do write my own music.
Yeah.
Other people don't do that.
We had Dawson from The Ongoing Concept on, and he had repeatedly tried to change their Wikipedia page so it didn't say that they were a Christian band. And every single time he changed it, it just got someone would revert it back. So for like 7 years, he just dealt with that. And he was like, after talking about it, he's like, I don't know, maybe this will count as a reference and we can actually get it changed. But the reason I asked is because, again, I had mentioned I don't know the through line of your Christian upbringing, but I know that Wikipedia only quotes a 2012 Tumblr post from you as to what it is that you believe. So,
but that probably sums it up.
Yeah. Well, the Wikipedia page just says you're a non-denominational Christian and raised Catholic. But do you want me to read your Tumblr?
Oh, please. I put so much late night sad teen angsty work into that. Okay. I would love to hear it from someone else out loud.
So Anonymous asked, are you religious? Meaning you have any kind of faith, not necessarily that you participate in organized religion. I really appreciate the clarity there. You said, yes, I am a Christian.
Wait. Can you do it in my voice?
No, I don't do impressions.
Worth an ask. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks for trying, though.
So we can we'll fix it in post. We'll
okay, great.
We have real serious AI behind us, so we'll be able to clean that up.
Sure.
Yes, I am a Christian. I wouldn't consider myself part of a religion exactly. I grew up in a Catholic church, but got out of there in middle school. Just not for me. Non-denominational Christian because God saved my life and Jesus is my homeboy, which was probably a T-shirt you might have had in 2012.
I didn't, but I just talked like that actually.
Yeah. So that is that's the extent that I have, but just from hearing around. And I know I feel like we may have had some alignments on our comeuppance when it comes to music. The whole like cornerstone bands deal, things like that. So it's hard to know where to start because the music direction is always a blast. But let's just go ahead and start with your Catholic school upbringing. Were you always like, was it always private Catholic school, or is that just something when did the Catholic thing start up for you? I know sometimes parents make that choice for their kids.
It's funny
later.
because it wasn't Catholic school.
Okay.
It was just Catholic church. But in high school, I did try really hard to go to a private Catholic school because I didn't have friends, and the only friends I had went there. But my family didn't really have money, and I didn't understand that private school costs money. So that didn't happen. But when I was younger, like a year and a half old, my parents got divorced. So my mom grew up in a Lutheran church. I would say non-practicing, really just kind of holidays. But I honestly can't really remember ever going to any kind of service with her, even for holidays. My dad, that side of the family, very Italian, very Catholic, in the convenient, extremely hypocritical way, which I think a lot of people, and I'm not explicitly saying that every part of the Catholic Church or every member of each congregation is corrupt and uses it to and rationalize certain things that benefit them. But in my experience with my family and the congregation that I went to, that's what was happening.
What was the first hypocrisy that became clear to you as a kid? And I feel like whatever ones hit people first is always interesting.
Honestly, I think the purity aspect of it. And my dad saying that the Catholic Church, at least the congregation I went to, didn't believe in the rapture, which to me, I felt was very black and white throughout the Bible. So that, the purity aspect of it, because of what was being preached and the stories my dad liked to tell of when he was in the Air Force. And then also the emphasis on financial contributions, that didn't make sense to me when I was younger. I felt like it was wrong. And as an adult, I can look back retrospective and see people actively trying to buy their way into heaven, which is so silly to me. There's no other word to describe it. It's just silly.
Yeah.
Silliness.
Yeah, that was what. So didn't grow up Catholic, grew up evangelical. So we didn't like the we liked the Catholics, but like we knew where they were going when they died, and
right,
different place than us. And that was the one that came up all the time. Was like the buying. It was
indulgences.
Yeah, penances, indulgences. I don't know, but yeah, I always. It's funny because I feel like there's some people who grew up Catholic that were like, I don't know, that they didn't see it because ultimately, like, you could argue that like all the tithing we did, it's like, you weren't buying your way into heaven, but they had a really fucking great sales pitch for why you had to do it. So like the outcomes were pretty similar.
Yeah, I definitely, I don't know, I didn't learn anything about Jesus growing up in a Catholic church, which that is the cornerstone and the foundation of Christianity. So they love to say that the Catholic Church is the only real religion because that's the one that was started. You know, Jesus literally said, "You're going to build the cornerstone of my church." And that was the Catholic Church that came from that. So why didn't they feel any need to teach anyone or any of the kids, even at Bible school, about Jesus? That's the thing that also, as an adult looking back, I don't get that. How are you supposed to really educate children in a way where they can choose to follow that faith if you're not telling them what the core of it is supposed to be? That makes sense.
Yeah, but it's almost like a dependence on just the traditional aspect of it. Tradition for the sake of tradition, which is what a lot of people's experiences is in religion in general, but evangelicalism lacked traditions to like I don't know. It's like there wasn't like that thing to bring you back like for the sake of doing it, or it's like a
Right.
comfort even over time where you're just like one of my previous bosses was Jewish, and he had invited me over to his house for a Seder, my wife and I, and we were talking to a bunch of different people at the table. Some were previous Christians who converted to Judaism. One was becoming a rabbi who grew up Christian. One was Jewish, but an atheist. And you talk to all these people and you're like, it's kind of sick the way that like you're all still here doing this around these like traditional concepts. But I know they hold on to those a little bit more. Catholic traditions are, I mean, maybe you like stale wafers and stuff like that. So if that works for you, that's fine. But not quite the same. My point is
evangelicalism kind of like craps on tradition and
Yeah.
ritual. I feel like
Yeah.
it's almost like it's like you exercising. Like you don't always feel like exercising. It's not always like a transcendental experience going to the gym and like just doing your reps. Sometimes it's just going there and going through the motions and saying like, okay, I did it. Like I got through it. I committed and I did this thing that I said I would do. And that's almost kind of how like tradition is, which you can't have all that. It can't be all just going through the motions, but then like evangelicalism is like so heavy on like the other side of it where it's like you almost should have like like an epiphany and a spiritual awakening like every Sunday, or else like maybe you're not really tapped in the way other people are. I don't know. It's tough. It's like one way or like too far one direction or the other gets very difficult to keep up with.
I feel like even on a psychological level, there are so many studies that show that routines are positive for us. So I feel like a lot of the tradition in church with, religions that primarily focus around a routine, like you were saying, it is tapping into that psychological need for consistency, even if there isn't necessarily a faith element under it. I think those people end up believing that the routine and the tradition they're doing is positive and beneficial for them. They're raised in it. They're taught not to doubt it, not to second guess it. And then they die being happy that they had that for their entire lives, which I think is great. If that serves people in a positive way, awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Which is why you'll see the same benefits in like non-theistic religions, where it's just like that's like the commitment to practice for practice sake, or for even grounding sake, like having that grounding post of like, here's an ethos or a set of values that you can anchor yourself to. Because without that, it's just like, you just kind of, I mean, I struggle with that even like as I've, steadily become less religiously committed, I guess. I'm 35. I was super committed to this through through my into evangelicalism through my mid-20s. Started leaving that in around mid-20s, and then kind of just in the past couple years have had some more dramatic faith shifts, but I'm like, even still, like it was I can see, I was thinking about this even today, like benefits that I saw in my life from having a commitment to that it's like a collective set of values, where like some of the things that I feel like I did that added value to my life and were some of the most impactful life experiences I had were because of that. And I know now that with not having that so much is like I feel like I've lost a certain connection, and it's hard to even get it back, or I don't really know the path to really find that in the same way again. But that's strange. But enough about, sorry.
He just emails Russell Brand videos to his mom and dad. That's his Sunday ritual.
It's a positive life decision. And I know you kind of ended there feeling like you're on a tangent, but it's kind of, I was having that like old woman moment where I'm like, yes, because my church currently, they do seasons. So they do like a season of service, which we're in right now, a season of learning, a season of giving, And to be totally honest, I can't remember what the other one is because I probably don't care about it as much. But Community, I don't know. But the Season of Service is my favorite. And they do this huge community citywide day with a bunch of other churches where it is just a week and a long weekend of volunteer work, charity work, drives, going door to door in neighborhoods if you can help with anything. And I have not been attending lately. I've been watching the services online when I can, but that was something that hit me when I saw that was coming up, where I was just like, wow, this is a really big part of my life that is missing. But I was so focused on everything else that I needed to fix, I forgot about and kind of abandoned the one positive thing that was working for me. So it's interesting that you said that now, because I was thinking about that last night before I went to bed.
Yeah, it's funny. There's this push and pull of like, it's like you when you're in certain things, you get tired by it because it's exhausting. You want your free time, but then after a while, you just kind of sit in your own self for too long, and you feel like that's kind of ruining you, and then you just teeter back and forth between unhappiness. Is a depressed person's way of looking at it, but it's all like it kind of in between those shifts, you're like, I finally found it. You're like, I don't like this anymore. And you kind of just bounce, I don't know, you bounce back and forth for a while.
You got to
That's
get
how I
back
feel
on the
about my safety
landscaping
gear.
crew.
Yeah.
Like there's like an old man with a wood pile full of hornets that needs moved,
Yeah.
It's got your name on it.
That's all I need.
Little danger, little excitement. I do have something to add about growing up in the Catholic Church, though, that I thought of that might offer some really nice comic relief.
Yes.
I actually got kicked out of Sunday school.
I love this already.
3 times. I was in elementary school. So this was before I had found the first non-denominational church that I was going to, which is a whole separate and very life-altering story for me. But I was sitting in Sunday school, and we were going through Genesis in the kid-friendly version. And, we're talking about how God
The
made
only
everything. Yeah. Oh, actually, very valid statement. Nobody wants to hear the heavy. But anyway, sorry, I'm very tangent-ish. I just need to close my eyes when I'm talking so I don't get distracted by anything.
Nobody likes to talk about the part where giant angels fuck a bunch of humans.
Yeah. No. Why would you even bring that up?
That's my favorite part.
This is my PG.
It's my favorite Pornhub category.
It's really been taking off since the pandemic, if we're being honest.
Yeah. That's the 4th season, Blood Reckoning.
That one's my favorite. It sounds like a good meal. I'm just kidding. I'm a vegetarian, so that was funnier to me.
You'd get it at like a wild game party at some gun club or whatever.
No, it's a special at KFC. Anyway, so we're going through the whole story of creation, and this day, this was made this day, blah blah blah, and then the day of rest. So I raised my hand, and I don't remember her name. Let's can just throw out a name. Give me a random
Rebecca.
Miss Rebecca. If God made everything, who made God? To which she said, God was just always there. He's always existed, like the air you breathe. And I said, Miss Rebecca, you just said God made air. So it was not positive, I guess, for her, because she couldn't answer it. So I remember exactly what she looked like. I remember she's wearing, I'm terrible at names. I guess I was as a child too. I'm pretty sure I was in like 2nd grade at this point. So I didn't find this out until maybe 5th, 6th grade, because my dad was laughing about it. Apparently she pulled him aside afterwards and asked me not to come back because she was afraid I would disrupt the faith of the other children.
Ooh, what a fragile, weak faith.
She thought you were a rascal. She thought you were getting fresh and you were just seeking knowledge.
I said, but like, who made God though?
Is there a person in the world that hates being questioned more than elementary school, Sunday school teachers?
I actually kind of am one, and I love it.
Congressman?
Oh, my dad. This regular I have at the coffee shop who accused me of getting a fake coffee degree online when I went through a year and a half of training to get my SEAA certification. So he made me really mad the other day. I probably shouldn't say that out loud. He's not going to listen to this.
A fake coffee degree. What name did he ask you to write on a cup?
Nothing. We don't write on cups. He just asked me a series of really, yeah. Not
I like how personal it is there with the names on cups, you know?
I greet most of our regulars by name when they come in. Does that count for anything?
Well,
yeah, with his, you can just hold it in the air and be like, jerk off.
Yeah.
Jerk off.
Same first letter.
Yeah.
No, I just hate, I have a very, very strong sensitivity to people making assumptions that are actually very degrading and they don't realize it. So.
Is that why aspects of Christianity became problematic for you?
Mm-hmm. I didn't think about it like that. I actually, the only time it was ever problematic for me was when I got kicked out of my first band for having a crush on a girl, but we'll get there.
Oh, we have ground to cover. All right. So Catholic school, Catholic church. Sorry. I don't know. I keep saying Catholic school. I feel like a doofus. You find an evangelical church. What is the appeal of evangelical church? You seemed like you were getting a little disenfranchised there with Catholic church, but how did the evangelicals find you, or how did you find them?
Okay, 6th grade, first year in middle school at the small local school that I went to. So there's 2 elementary schools, they combine into one middle school, and then you're with those people through high school, etc. There was this girl who rode my bus. Also, the first time I ever had to ride the bus, because I always had either my older sister to take me to school or my stepfather was a gym teacher at the elementary school. So first time riding the bus. I have no friends. I'm absolutely terrified of being in this giant long hot dog car with a bunch of kids that are just staring at me because I am like soft goth at the time. 100% like going to school with my my little Ramones like side messenger backpack and like a Blink-182 shirt. Absolutely every day. There's like not a day where that was an exception. And if I wasn't wearing a Blink shirt, it was a Blink hoodie. So there's this one girl who I thought was crazy. Highest pitch voice I've ever heard. Acted like the embodiment of a real life anime character. And I couldn't stand her because I was a little asshole, you know? And she ended up, this is trigger warning for suicide. But I, at that point, the previous year had lied my way out of counseling, was very heavily struggling with suicidal ideation. And at that point, that was the first time.
Still 6th grade, you said?
Yep, 6th grade.
That's pretty early.
Yeah. I started going to counseling in 4th grade for self-injury.
Wow.
But my brain decided that it hated me at a very young age. And I think everybody thought it was something that I would grow out of. But there are some mental health issues that just stay with you forever. And that's why I'm so open about them, because I think there's too much emphasis on the need to fix, correct, get better. So the people who are really struggling and will forever, because that is their brain chemistry and it can't be corrected, you can't change it. You just have to learn how to cope, how to shut those voices down, how to ignore it. And this was actually something that started helping me, because she had tried to be my friend and I ignored her. She was in every single class that I had too. Homeroom to the end of the day, every single class, the only person. And I had made this plan after like the 3rd week of school where I just decided I was done. That was my new chance to make friends. The only friends I had kind of had that thing where they got hot over the summer in 6th grade, the 6th grade version of hot, you know, they got their back to school wardrobe at Aeropostale or whatever. And I was so left behind.
Their acne cleared up early.
Yeah. Assholes. Meanwhile, I was like very small and hit like a weird puberty where I was still short and small, but I was not effeminate and had that weird Italian like boob sprout thing, which has completely disappeared. Praise Jesus. And because I would not be able to stand up straight, but I went through that. So it was just very much the opposite. It gave something for the boys to pick on me about. It made something for the girls to also tease me about, because they're like, oh, well, why don't you take advantage of that? Or point at me in the gym room, which was the first time, like the gym locker room where I'm changing in front of other girls. Also, having realized the previous year that I was getting crushes on girls as well. So it just all of these things are happening at the same time. So I made my first exit strategy, we'll call it, to unalive myself. And the same day where I like went home, I even took a couple things, gave them to old friends, etc. Wrote a middle school version of a will, took an hour nap with my cat, and then said, okay, this is the day. This
I don't
girl,
want to be like that guy, but who got all of your stuffed animals?
I didn't have any at that point.
Okay, sorry. Could you carry
It
on?
was really the like 200 pack zipper case of CDs that was important to me,
Ooh.
Oh
which
yeah.
we're all going to get sent to California for my brother because he sent me most of them. Very influential on me. Sent me my first instrument. Sent me every Blink 182 CD.
I
That's a
read
good
this
brother
on
right there.
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
A
It
bass
comes up a lot.
guitar.
I still have it. It's it's in a case over there somewhere. But yeah, so she had invited me to this youth group that was right by her house. So she lived maybe 2 minutes away from me. The church shared a parking lot right beside her house. Invited me to go to this youth group called The Rush. So I said, okay, I'll go, because it was the same night. I asked my mom, and the only reason I agreed to go is because I thought, in a really sick way, I thought it would hit people harder if I went to a youth group and then died by suicide the same night.
Damn, that's premeditated.
Yeah. So I said,
Yeah.
this just adds like an extra twist to it. So I remember I was sitting in that room. It was a skate bowl in the back of it, like a half like bowl, and then bands playing. They covered a Blink 182 song. The
You
worship
felt
band
at
did.
home.
Pretty
I
progressive.
did. Yeah.
For the
And then when they
90s?
let's see, I graduated in 2011. So
Yeah. Early
92,
2000s.
around
Early
98.
2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s. So I had never seen worship. Obviously, growing up in a Catholic church, I had only seen singing from hymns. So when all of these kids are worshiping, I'm seeing kids in a couple grades older than me that I know from the skate park. I'm seeing girls that are in high school who I looked up to because I thought they were so pretty, but they were also nice to me in elementary school. And I remember looking down during worship and seeing this girl who was either a sophomore or a freshman at that time, and seeing cuts all over her arm. And this was someone who I just thought was light years away from me. And then seeing her worship, it kind of tipped something into me where I resonated with the pain she was feeling, even though I thought she was untouchable. Q, she's so high. But then the pastor, like the youth pastor, he said all the games we played, all the songs I chose, those are out the window. They're not going to connect to anything. And I haven't talked about this in a long time. I might actually cry. But he basically said that he really felt like there was someone there struggling who needed to hear an entirely different message. I really haven't talked about this in years.
Wow.
And so he started talking about the exponentially increasing teen suicide rates. Okay.
Okay. Take your time.
Well, I love to cry. I just don't like talk very clearly when I'm crying, which will not be effective for a podcast. Like, this bitch loves to cry. I love talking about how I'm crying. I have my sign on my merch table used to say crying is normal. I had limited hand printed shirts that said crying is fucking normal. Deal with it. So crying is great, but trying to talk when you're crying, not so good. And then just went on just talking about that and talking about how even if you don't feel like you have a purpose and you don't understand why you're here, everything you're struggling, everything you're learning, if you can get through it, it will give you a story that you can use to help other people. And that is something that I carried with me my entire fucking life, to the point where I had to stop because I was running myself into the ground. I stopped caring for myself. I was only doing everything for everyone else. But I decided to go back the next week. I said, I'll give myself one more week and I'll go. I made so many new friends the next week. And then the week after that, I made more friends that went to my school. And I had a community where I felt like I belonged. And I had somebody who the first time I ever met them made eye contact with me and told me to stay alive when I hadn't told anybody what my plan was. So when you, like that Tumblr post that you referenced, when I say it saved my life, I mean, it literally saved my life.
Wow. That, yeah, sounds like some divine serendipity.
Heavy stuff for a youngster. I mean, 6th grade, that's a lot.
When I was like 11, 12 maybe. I think I was 12. Yeah, I was 11 or 12, because the next year at a Christian New Year's Eve event, a 17-year-old was hitting on me and then found out I was 12, and that was a joke for a long time. All of my friends that were their age would just come up to me randomly and go, "You're 12?" So there's that.
Wow. So
Ugh.
that's where you found, like, so you stayed with that community for a while, like through high school? Was that like your connection to your Christian connection and community for a while?
Yeah, I stayed there for all throughout the rest of middle school, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. Freshman year, I actually was going to a lot of local shows, and that was 100%, we all know this, the era of churches and Christian venues that are often skate parks, things like that. So growing up in Ohio,
that saved
it was
our lives. Well,
Yep,
not
the
in the
attic.
same way that stuff saved your life, but metaphorically speaking, it was
No,
like
same thing.
that like
It created our personalities.
Yeah, it allowed me to have a personality that, like, because everyone's trying to adopt one, right? You're like, you have your group that you fit into. No one wants to feel like a floater completely. So you're like, I was like, that's like what provided me that's it. I found it. That's what I'm gonna be. So then you trade in all of your clothes for band t-shirts and black jeans and studded belts, and you found your people.
I still have my white studded belt from middle school. I will not get rid of it.
Ooh.
Oh man, I wish I still had mine.
Yeah, you rocked the white. You did rock the white studded belt.
I kind of want to bring it back. Can we? Hot Topics are closing all over the nation. How can we bring back the white studded belt?
It's almost time, because like right now it's like all the stuff that was popular in like 2001
right before
is big.
Yeah,
everybody's wearing like low cut Gooch jeans, knit
please
tops.
Don't say Gooch. Please don't say that. Ugh, I need the black studded belt thing and the black studded bracelets are back. I've seen them on TikTok. I went on tour with the TikTok artist. It's a thing that's happening, but we need to transition to the white, and then it's got to be the lime green.
Yes, the rainbow ones were always a thing too.
I never had one.
Add a splash of color to it, kind of like
hiding.
It's like the firmament that separates the waters. It's like the rainbow belt that separates the black tee and the black pants. You
have to have the one belt on your jeans, and then the one that's just like over your shirt, that's like mid thigh length.
That's the Dose belts. I remember that.
Band name.
Dose belts.
Dose belts. Yeah, I want to skip back to that period where like my whole persona was bleeding cowboy font. That was my best years. It's all been downhill from there.
I was famous on MySpace, and people used to steal my what do they call it? My profile themes. I would code them and build them myself, and people would steal them. That was like the ultimate. Still mad.
Yeah, I mean, that was the ultimate sign of disrespect during the MySpace heyday.
I was Kelsey fucking Delta. You're gonna take my profile,
Kelsey Delta.
Yeah, that was my first band. That actually, look at this good Segwa. Sorry, I was gonna say that seriously, but I wanted you to know that
Is that how you supposed to say that? Segwa.
It depends. How do you say croissant?
Croissant.
Croissant. I know. I'm pretty sure it's. Dang it! There go my headphones again. I'm pretty sure it's Segway, always and forever.
I can't hear Segway without thinking about the CEO driving one off of a cliff.
The dream.
Did he do that?
Too bad he didn't have one of those ripcord outfits to save his life.
Dude, I just remember, like, every time I hear Segway, I think of, I'm not going to get specific, but I remember a couple that we knew got married very young. And like one of the few things you saw from their honeymoon was that they were on like a guided Segway tour with the bike helmets on. Yeah. That's canned fun right there.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you are so jealous.
I would do a
And you
Segway
still
tour
are.
today.
Because he got married late, which was 6 months after that couple.
So they stole the idea from you. So it's actually this like huge contention point because you were like, you already posted it online. I can't do it now.
he already
I wasn't daring enough to copy their MySpace theme.
You
know what I
already
mean?
had a romantic Segway tour booked for you and your fiance, and you're just like, God damn it, she's gonna think I stole it.
Haunted Segway tour. Let's make it a thing.
Yeah, there we go.
A ghost hunting Segway tour.
Ghost hunt. Yes, you have to like you have the full like the Ghostbusters backpack on while also segwaying.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So Segway. Speaking of Segway, how
Segway.
did what we were talking about segue into your next story?
Yes, the Segway I identified. So you asked how long I stayed with that church. So I started going to those shows that were hosted by churches, a lot of Christian venues. I'm from Ohio, which means I grew up with like The Devil Wears Prada and things like that. Like my first show that I ever went to was The Devil Wears Prada's first show ever at 180 Skate Park.
Nice.
Their drummer Dan was actually playing in 2 bands that same night. Yeah, just that. You know,
was that pre-Reptar King of the Ozone, right? That they had the
they literally didn't have any music out yet. So
amazing.
Good times. That growing up going to those shows. So I started these shows in middle school. I would come home, find every band on MySpace, add them, send them a great set tonight message, you know, just trying to make friends. And after one show at this place called The After, I had like a solo MySpace music account, which is still up, and you can hear really crappy, my first ever demos. And a couple people from one of the bands found that page when I added them, and they wanted to start a quote unquote girl band. So a female fronted project. And this was, I think Paramore had just released their first record. So I auditioned to be in this band with pressure by Paramore, and I remember them saying, yeah, you hit all the high notes, sure, let's do it. So I was in that band, which was called Delta Delta, for a while, and that was really where I would say like the beginning of the life that I still lead. But they were all raised by pretty hyper conservative Christian parents, so I got kicked out of that band because my best friend someone who still identified as female at the time, who I did have a crush on. And he is a trans male who has given me 100% permission to explain that he did identify as female as that time, because it is so crucial to my story. So there were rumors starting because I was friends with someone who at the time was a quote unquote lesbian. So everyone was talking about that. They sat me down and had an intervention with me. So
amazing. I gotta love that. That
very good
Christian love. I love that.
Yes.
I miss that even.
It was I was the face of the band. So if I didn't align morally with what they thought, I couldn't be in that band anymore. So they kicked me out. I started dating that person. That was like my high school sweetheart. And that was my time that made me a very fuck the church person. Fuck the church. I imagine they didn't
give you the 2 thumbs up on that then.
No, we didn't talk for years. We didn't talk until I think it was 4 years. If we saw each other at shows, it was because we divided the scene. There were people who found out why, that hated them, and there were people who supported them because that was the culture at the time. So it was really rough. Like the core people in Ohio's prominent like Dayton music scene were split in half at the time, and it was my fault.
It's so wild. In the church that you were part of, did they thumbs down that too? Were you?
So they didn't know. I had never said anything about it. And
your old band didn't narc on you for the sake of?
No. We went to different churches, so I had a little bit of safety net there. But I had already had a little bit of a divide with some of the people in my church. About 6 months before I started this band, one of my best friends from youth group actually died by suicide as well. So I had a very heavy little kid life, which is funny because I'm pretty happy externally on the outside. I've learned to protrude joy because I have to, or I will die.
Oh my God.
It's the little things. It's
But
the
that
little
I
things.
mean that's off. I feel like that's has to be common, right? Because the amount of people, I mean, it could just be a platitude, but the amount of people who know someone who died by suicide, everyone's like they were so happy all the time. You never would have seen it. Like it's always that. So there's got to be fairly common to like feel like
Yeah.
you got to stay in that zone, right?
Yeah. And there's this, it's like you also don't want anyone to know. And if you're already hurting all the time, you don't want to put that on other people. And if you're struggling with depression, suicidal thoughts, you most likely already feel like a burden. So why would you want to carry yourself in a way that makes you feel more like a burden on other people? And I mean, with my friend, her name's Laura. I've talked about her a lot because it was very, very pivotal. We had an anti-suicide pact because we both struggled with it. So we had this agreement where if one of us failed and didn't make it, the other one had to stay alive no matter what and lead a life that was so good that you could split it between two people and the accomplishments would still be superb. God,
That's one hell of a pact.
I worked through a lot. Yeah. And then she died. And I spent so long being
Ugh.
so mad. But I've worked through that a lot. A lot of my therapy that I started at the end of 2020 was unpacking how I turned what could have been good motivation into like this ghost that was haunting me. Because I would get mad because I would struggle with those suicidal thoughts and be like, how dare you leave me here with this promise? I'm done. I want to leave. I want to exit the room, but I can't. But I'm thankful for that now because I'm properly medicated and I'm glad that I'm alive. So there's that. There's a lot of, you guys didn't know that you were going to be talking to a real sad bitch.
No, I mean, I had some inclination that we were going to traverse some of this territory when your most recent album was Songs I Wrote Instead of Killing Myself. So that kind of like set the scene a tiny bit, but
yeah. But I'm gonna condense the church journey so you can ask me questions where you see fit. Because I really was all over the place, but it's played such a prominent role in my life that it could be a 4-hour conversation, which we don't need to do because my voice is high pitched enough that there are people who probably immediately turn this off. I'm aware.
Well,
but
if they're still listening to us ramble, they're probably just along for the ride. Whatever we put out.
I feel like I've tried really, really hard to not do voices. I default to like character voices a lot. But I try not to do that on podcasts because it's just, I've had people tell me it's very disorienting.
Well, give me an Ohio
I'm
accent. What in your mind is an Ohio accent?
My voice. Ohio is the most Ohio is actually voted and rated the quote unquote most neutral state accent in the United States.
Is it really?
Well, and then you got Michigan, like just north. That's where I grew up, and Michigan is just like it's kind of like trashy Wisconsin, like accent wise.
I don't know. I always thought like growing up, I always thought Michigan boys had cute accents, but that's just because I was very much in love with Jordan Dreyer from Law Dispute after seeing them play in the dirt at Cornerstone so many years. Please don't. They follow me
Cornerstone
on Twitter now.
will do
Can
that.
you edit that out? Oh no, I did. I think Cornerstone is definitely something we should talk about. But let me do my bullet point thing real quick. So, left that church because that friend, she had actually called me right before and had tried to get in touch, but I had just started practicing. So it was like 6 months before our first show because we had started rehearsing. We're already bands. I was so busy with the band stuff and getting ready, like getting sets together, writing our songs, that when she reached out to me with just a, hey, can we catch up? It'd be really good to talk. And she called me after I wasn't supposed to be on the phone. I picked it up, I hung up, and then she was gone. And I carried that guilt for a really long time because I was prioritizing selfish endeavors. And that was when music for me became something where I realized I could write songs that were about what I was struggling with, or I could write songs about people I had crushes on. And I saw a very strong contrast and the dichotomy between those two things and how they impacted other people, especially as a female artist. You get written off so quickly if you're writing love songs. And I realized that as like a 15-year-old. So I wrote some songs about her, and people really resonated with that. And that, again, changed what I shared. But that I started pulling away from my church, and I don't think it was really the fault of any of them. It was just that I felt a lot of pain every time I was there, and I sat in the same seat and she wasn't. So I just kind of started drifting, and I think leaning into the Christian music scene instead, that kind of became my church. So I stayed there, and then I still considered that my church until summer of 2011. I went on a tour with 21 Pilots. I was just helping a friend's band, and this was before they were even signed to Fueled by Ramen. It was actually that tour that they had the meeting with the Fueled by Ramen reps.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Josh where I had said that I was looking for a new church, and I knew they were both Christians, and anybody who is as passionate about what they do as they are and is also a Christian probably has a really good church. So he actually recommended going to Tyler's church, which is still my church to this day.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So I think becoming friends again with a group of people, I would drive an hour and 15 minutes to the house where Tyler and Mark, who runs Real Bear Media and does all of their media stuff. Mark is still one of my best friends. He literally called me today just to ask about my cat. But having that community where I think I kind of became like their younger sister that they also kind of saw as their age, because I was just a few years younger. Having those people where I could go over there, stay up, talking about life, having questions, having doubts, seeing the correlation between art and how it can help people. And then also watching 21 Pilots just take off and how hard they worked. That was something to me. It changed my perspective on everything. But that was, I think, the thing that really put me back on a faith journey.
That makes a lot. I think what I think is really interesting about that is, I mean, we're living in just like the zeitgeist is like ex-evangelicals at this point. I mean, even media has grasped those straws. Every like few months, there's a new documentary about some fucked up church or family or something like that related to Christianity. So like, that's clearly what people are interested in. And I think so. I mean, that obviously exists for a reason, a lot of legitimate reasons for people to feel the way they do. I am like, but so much of it was just like this juxtaposition of like truth and lies and which one's which. And when the cognitive dissonance kind of sets in, people are like, I can't really hold this intention with this. And what I'm hearing is like, you kind of bypass some of that by finding like kind of like real people in an environment that was just a safe place to be a real person. And you didn't have to like, it didn't become all about like this, like these, I'm trying to like articulate, but just this idea of like, is it true or is it not? Like, I feel like those become inconsequential concepts. At least if you have a life of faith that goes deeper than just, these like concrete ideas of right, wrong, what happens if I break the rules, like when you break out of fundamentalism, essentially. And I think people got stuck in like the fundamentalist lane for so long that their brains are just like adapted to that way of thinking. So they just had to shift out. And even still, I think Casey and I talk about this a lot, but you find fundamentalism on the same side. The people who leave evangelicalism, you kind of see fundamentalism on some of those other spectrums as well too, just a different team. So I don't know. I think that's what I find fascinating about people. Like what you're saying is being able to like find these people and rekindle that faith connection. It doesn't feel like you were like, and I'd like obviously you to speak to this, but nothing about your story was so far is, well, it just didn't, I read some science books and it didn't really make sense anymore. Like, it's not that. It's something more than that. So your reason for leaving didn't just have to like balance one idea versus another. Like, maybe think there's a space to hold two things together at once.
Yeah, I definitely I feel like most people just get bored with it. Like, they hit an age where if you grew up in the church, especially if it wasn't your own choice, you just are out of it. And I did have another circumstance where I almost left. I was going every week to my church. I would be the last one there. I would be the first one to leave. I wouldn't talk to anybody. And I kind of approached my pastor and gave him a courtesy notice after being there. Gosh, I think this was like 2015, maybe. After being there for years at that point, every single week, I just walked up to him and I said, the people I was friends with, who I came to this church with, they're gone most of the time. I feel like I lost my community. Anytime I make friends, it's because they're trying to use me to get to those people. And that was a real big side effect of like being introduced as a group in the friend group that was around 21 Pilots. I couldn't make friends at my own church after they got famous, even when I wasn't really hanging out with them anymore, because it would be 2-3 weeks, or when they would be home, if we were going to go get lunch, it would be those people I thought were friends being like, well, aren't you going to invite me? Well, I would like to hang out with them, that kind of stuff. So
Oh my God, that must
gave
have
up.
sucked. Yeah,
It
that's a
so
shitty
bad.
feeling.
It sucked so bad because I was like, this is supposed to be my safe place and my community, and I can't have a community because nobody is seeing me at all. So I approached our pastor and had I don't have anything bad to say about this church. So his name's Joel. And anybody can literally Google like Tyler Joseph's church or whatever. But I approached Joel and I basically said, hey, I'm not going to be coming here anymore. This is my last week and this is why. And it was funny because I had already decided that. And when I was leaving, he said, Kelsey, and he called me over and he's like, how have you been? I haven't talked to you in a while. And I said, it's funny, I'm leaving. This is kind of my last service. I just kind of want to say bye. And this is why. And he said, well, have you considered serving? Have you considered getting involved? And I hadn't at that point. I would kind of hang out and help with small things, but I had never actually committed to serving. So obviously the first thought was helping with worship because I'm a musician, but I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Just put me where I'm needed. Just put me somewhere where you need help. And he said, there are a lot of people who have no idea who you are friends with. And we have a lot of new members who are actively serving who won't know and who don't care. So I had a meeting a week later with someone. His name's Dan, and he is in charge of the elementary school kids church. So he's one of the youth pastors there. And we sit down, we're talking, and he was like, oh, it's funny. I know your old band, like your MySpace band. And we start talking about music and how we're probably the only two people at that church that listen to me without you. And then he asked me if I will be a small group leader for first and second grade girls. So I said, sure. I used to work at the YMCA. Let's give it a go. And the third day that I was there, this little girl, I caught her like, I don't know how to describe this with words. If one of you wants to see what I'm doing and then give a description. So imagine this glass I'm holding is a fish tank with tadpoles in it, right? So she's going like this.
You're like shaking your head, wiggling it towards your glass.
Like yes, mimicking exactly. A tadpole.
Like, yeah, okay, I guess that's exactly what it was. And I said, hey, what are you doing? And she said, this is how they communicate. She just starts doing that. And she was so funny. And it was her second time there. So she came the second week after I did. So I got kind of a week to see, a week to like actually be doing it, which was her first week. And this was her second week there. I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, yeah, I can talk to them like that. And I said, oh, and she, you enjoy them? Do you really like animals? And she said, yeah, I like animals more than people. I used to have friends, but they're all gone now. Which obviously I've had several friends that passed away, not just Laura. So it hit me really hard. And I said, well, there are a lot of people here that you could probably make friends with. So I kind of stayed in that role because I was committed to helping her find friends. And I will never forget, a couple weeks later, we're going outside, we're playing on the playground because it's nice outside, seeing her holding hands with one of the kindergartners and just running and saying, I made made a friend. And this other girl go like, she's my new best friend. I just started sobbing. And I was like, I'm sorry. I've just been waiting for her to make friends. And it's
I love
so
it.
beautiful. And I'm trying to make friends. And somebody else that I was surfing with, he was like, well, I'm your friend. And I said, what? What do you mean? He said, we're friends. Like, I'm coming to your show next week too. And I was like, okay. I guess we all made friends. It's beautiful. So I stayed in kids for a long time, and I still every once in a while will help. Did some worship stuff with them too, and ended up being in a small group that was led by Dan. And then everybody got married, and I got shoved out, and then I was in a different small group, and then I was touring all the time, and it was too inconsistent for me, and I just felt like I was 6 months behind every time I came back. So that was hard, but pandemic was nice because we were all on the same page. But yeah, I don't know. I just haven't felt as connected, I think, since the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, that was the exodus for a lot of people too, right? They're like, maybe they realize that they're used to going. They gone their whole lives, and then they're like, after like 3 months off, they're like, oh, I actually feel fine. And it was hard to go back.
What about the 12th like Zoom church service that they tuned into where he's like, we're going to talk about having faith over fear. They're like, maybe I'm an atheist.
My pastor actually talks a lot. Like, I think he's very good at walking the line between things that legally you're not allowed to say, like politically, like who you're voting for, things like that. But he would get
just doesn't stop a lot of them.
No, but he would do it in the best way, because during one of the elections, he basically said, we're not going to tell you who we're voting for, but we will tell you that it's very clear that one candidate wants to help people and one wants to hurt people, isolate people. And he said, neither of them look like Jesus, but there's a fine line. Christianity, we're meant to serve, we're not tear people down just because they don't believe what we believe, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a very fun day, because I'm looking around and I'm watching like the whole congregation, especially like the older, it's in kind of a privileged area in Columbus, watching them like look around and kind of like whispering, like everyone is realizing that he's going to vote for the Democratic candidate.
That's the liberal version of, well, I'm not going to tell you how to vote or who I'm going to vote for, but all I know is that I'm tired of seeing babies getting murdered in the womb. And you're like, I get it, brother.
Yeah, it was.
They all have their workarounds. My church had that workaround. That was the church I grew up in.
Same.
Mine is a Southern accent. It's pretty bigoted to just instantly go to a Southern accent whenever you want to just shit on conservatives. So that's probably not the right word, but maybe
you can. You can if you want.
I grew up in New England. I live in Massachusetts. I've grown up in New England. I wasn't until college that I lived somewhere else. And despite the fact that every fundamentalist I've ever met for the first 18 years of my life did not have an accent, I'll do the accent when I go fundamentalist.
My abusive ex had a Southern accent, so you can talk shit on it all you want, as far as I'm concerned. Just kidding. I like Southern accents. I think I have one sometimes.
Yeah.
If I'm drinking, it just comes out. A lot of my family, I don't know why, they have a little bit of like a Southern twang, and it comes out. I work hard to kind of not have it, but you can hear it sometimes. And then I released the song Taking Up Space, and people were like, this kind of has some twang in it. And I was like, shit, they know. Everyone knows.
People around here get the if they don't have an accent, they'll get a Boston accent when they're drinking or yelling. That's our equivalent.
What a miserable population.
We are, for the most part. It seems that way.
Did you have any like words or phrases where you felt like as you got older, you had to actively change the way you pronounce things? Did you do the work?
No, so I never really had the accent. So I didn't have to work towards it at all. But there are,
Thank you for stating your privilege. It's heard, it's understood.
It is. I never had to learn how to enunciate my R's. Thankfully, it's clearly complicated for people, but I didn't have that burden in my life.
That's fair. I'm resisting accent urges
Yeah.
again.
And then see, they always sound good in your head, and then you do it, and that's a lot of instant regret when I try to do accents. That's why I was reluctant to do an impression of you earlier too.
I think you just have to like switch your voice up a couple 6 octaves. Although
I'm
I'm
too
not.
scared.
I think don't fear. I think I've gotten to the point where I don't have retail voice when I'm talking about shit anymore. So I think people will be very surprised in interviews that I have my real voice, because I used to talk like this is my real speaking voice, but people always thought I was mad at them. Because when I work in customer service at a coffee shop, or I'd be talking to people, and it's always, if they're saying something nice, I'd be like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I mean it because I'm excited and my voice goes up when I'm being enthusiastic. So when I'm speaking to someone in my real voice, they're like, what did I do? She's so pissed at me right now. She's
That's
so
fun.
mad. I'll get texts. I just seem like you were kind of mad at me today. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to be myself. Fuck.
Retail voice is for sure a thing of going up a couple octaves. I've done some retail, but I had this incredibly shitty job in a call center. And so you're around like a dozen other people who are all reading the same script you are. And in between calls, everybody's talking, and then like they get the beep in their headset, and all of a sudden they go from just talking normal to like going up like a couple octaves, like, hey, how's it going? I'm so and so calling from whatever. And you're like, oh God, you don't hear it in yourself, but then you hear it in other people, and you're like, am I doing that too? And you definitely are.
Yeah, I do it a lot. I also have like with my friends, I kind of default to that weird baby voice all the time, especially if I'm asking for something. I don't know why. I don't know why it has been heavily established. I think it's because I foster kittens, so I talk about cats a lot, and a lot of people talk about animals with that very specific voice. And I'm looking at your faces, what voice I'm talking about, where it's like kind of like a baby. You get soft,
Yes.
and you get a little bit high pitched, and just
Yeah, you
this
gotta
little
touch your
kid is so
fingers.
cute. Yeah.
Please, senpai. That sort of thing.
And Steve did so good at the vet yesterday, like just stuff like that. But also,
Yeah.
I only have like a few super close friends, but we use that voice if there's conflict or if we need to ask for something. I was
Oh my
just
God.
wondering if maybe you could work my shift tomorrow, because you said you would, but I think you forgot, like that kind of thing.
It just softens the blow.
My abusive ex, literally at one point, he told me, he looked at me. There's a lot of issues there, but I stopped using that voice for a long time. So I think I enjoy it now because it feels like oddly empowering to take myself back 17 years or so. But he told me one time, he was like, yelled at me and was like, "You stop fucking talking like that." And I was like, I'm sorry. He's like, when you talk to your fucking friends like that, it makes me feel like a pedophile. And it was the first time I ever said anything back to him. And I said, well, that sounds like a you issue, which I did immediately regret because repercussions. But also, it's true. That was not my problem. I realize that now.
It is a strange thing to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was because it was something that showed a connection to someone else. You know what I mean? Like if me and my best friend were talking like that. But there are a lot of like isolation tactics and things like that I can see now. I'm just a trauma queen. I am a trauma queen.
He wasn't a youth pastor, was he?
No.
Okay.
No. He was an Episcopalian.
That explains a lot.
In a
Just
folk
kidding.
band.
Sorry, Episcopalians.
No, yeah, I try to not. I've never actually like outed him or like said his name. And I recently found out he's married now, so it's just one of those things where I'm like, I hope she's okay. That was my first response. I'm still friends with his sister on Facebook, and I didn't know it. So stuff from like his wedding popped up, and it was it was.
It's an emotionally really heavy day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it just caught me off guard. I actually drove through Ohio has drive-through liquor stores. You can literally drive through and buy. I went and I bought.
Way. That's cool.
I bought two bottles of red wine, and I looked at the woman that was working. I brought her a cheesecake once. She's very nice. And I just said, "This is what just happened. I'm gonna drink both of these tonight." She gave me her phone number, and she said, "If you need help later, you just give me a call."
That's got that Southern hospitality vibe.
I drank 1.5, but I'm Italian, so that's like 2 glasses.
Yeah, that's just getting hydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trauma's fun though. That's everything. I don't know. I feel like the shit that I have gone through it's been the community in the church and probably my mom, because she actually is an angel. She hasn't come up very much because we've been talking about shitty things mostly. But I think those are the two things that have kept me here and have often motivated me to keep going. I actually had a big article. So it's weird because we had to, obviously I had the flu, so we had to delay this and reschedule it. So we are now having this conversation the day after like a 12-page article and interview came out about why I actually paused doing music during the pandemic. That was the result of a sexual assault that I didn't tell anybody about, and I pushed everyone away. That is also the same time that I stopped serving at my church, because I just couldn't be around anybody who could tell that something was wrong, because I was on like the cusp of taking my story back. Pushback came out. It wasn't about my abuser anymore. It was about me. It was about my struggles, how I wanted to connect with people. And then it was very shortly after that, like within 2 weeks, that happened. I was sexually assaulted again, and I couldn't handle it. So I just pretended it didn't happen, and anybody who could tell anyone what was wrong just away. And I just got to the point where I was like, if I want to do this, keeping secrets has always felt like lying to me. And I understand I don't need to tell anybody that, but I did let a lot of people down, and I did push a lot of people away in a very strategic kind of thing that I planned out. So people would think it was normal. I needed to make sure nobody asked what was wrong, because I couldn't acknowledge it. So those people deserve an apology. The people who supported me deserve to understand why. I just didn't want to, so sick of just being that, like the victim survivor. that shouldn't define it. So we're now in this where that came out yesterday. So for, the past 24 hours, I've been getting so many messages from people, and I have to be really careful going through them and take care of myself, which I've learned how to do better at that. But it's also something where, like I said last night, I was thinking about it, because in that whole article, I'm talking about the friends I pushed away, family I shut down, industry people that I just burned the bridges with, because I just fucking couldn't. And not once in that article did I talk about how I stopped working in the children's ministry, because I couldn't get up in the morning to go to church. I just couldn't do it. And there's a lot. That's the theme of that. Couldn't. But now I'm at a point where I've done so much work that I can. And I've, apologized to friends, tried to reconnect with people, starting to do music again. And that's the biggest missing piece that I need to figure out where I am. I feel like a lot of this podcast, and the conversations you have with people is, obviously growing up a Christian and where you're at now. So I'm in a very weird season where I have to, I've spent so much time doing work on myself, by myself, with not Christian therapists, that my healing process that I needed to do psychologically for me, I had real tangible work that I needed to do that is not I'm just going to give it to God thing, which I've never been like that. I have control issues. So now I need to figure out how me taking care of myself and reconnecting with people works. Basically what I'm saying is I need to fucking go back to church, and I'm going to go on Sunday and just see what happens.
I'll be your accountability buddy on this one. Message you on Sunday and see if you went.
So how long has it been?
I'll post it. Well, I have gone. So like the Christmas services, it's been December, I think December of last year I did go, and they called because they were short staffed for people, and I was supposed to do help with worship for the kids service, which is one of my favorite things. I filled in on worship here and there. 2021 I was doing some tours, so I didn't want to commit to a new group of students, especially following the pandemic, because I wasn't going to consistently be there. I felt like stability with a leader was something those kids probably needed. So if I'm going to be gone every other month with touring, it just didn't seem fair to them. So I was still helping lead worship, occasionally, like maybe every other week for a couple months. Then I was gone, and I went on tour with Machine Gun Kelly, and then I felt like I couldn't go. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. I
was like, what?
That was my joke.
Did you see my face? I was like, okay, we're going to have to stop here for a moment.
No, I mean, I did go on tour with Machine Gun Kelly. I was working for another artist, but and
So
he's actually great.
I was just shocked by like the juxtaposition of musical stuff. So it was with you weren't playing music.
No, I was playing guitar and tour managing for another artist.
Okay.
I'd prefer to leave the conversation at that. But
okay.
Colson is great. He's a really nice person. Everybody on Machine Gun Kelly's team was awesome. But yeah, so that was the joke. I just actually had a lot of stuff going on when I got back and was trying to work on my own music stuff and had to work at the coffee shop job on Sundays because we had a couple people leave. So it was something where I just needed time to readjust, then filled in here and there. And I really felt like my return to the community was going to be last Christmas. I had a couple children's services. I was going to help with worship and be a team leader at one of the services. But we had the biggest snowstorm of the season that day. It started the night before, and I live an hour away from my church. So they reached out. I think they ended up canceling all the services anyway, but they didn't want me. It was, like, I think, a level 2 snow emergency. Goes up to level 3 here, which is only emergency vehicles are permitted on the road. If you drive in a level 3, you'll get arrested. So they told me not to come, and I haven't been to a service in person since like the week before that.
Okay. So when you are
6 months.
Gonna jump back a little bit. I think if any of the way I explain this sounds like it lacks empathy, please just point that out. But
I'll punch you.
No, but I'm thinking of like you have these experiences that you don't want to share with anybody. Because it's deeply personal and obviously difficult to talk about. And I think what's interesting is most people, like you yourself, probably would have, if you had known someone who'd gone through a similar experience, your heart would have gone out to them very sincere. Like that's generally the reaction that I think what I'm trying to say is people are afraid to share with people, knowing that if someone shared with them similar information, they would be like, you'd be like, oh my God, like what can we do? And that's all of humanity. Everyone's doing that constantly. It's different for me. And I don't know if that's some like ego or God complex that people have, or just, it's different for me. It's just the internalized
Maybe it's
shame.
just like, I don't want to rehash this over and over and over again for 10 different people.
Right. Was there anything that was like particularly like stuck out to you as like surprising in the way that it played out after you started being open about your experiences? Or
well, I think so. The first time when I was writing songs about my abusive relationship, that was different because I kind of had the safety net of releasing the songs and then playing them. And I wanted to be really intentional about verbalizing a trigger warning before playing some of those songs live. So it was something where I didn't realize how much a lot of people in the music scene I was playing in, like going on tour with like Knucklepuck, Boston Manor, The Wonder Years, in that music scene, how many women needed to hear from another woman that they had been through that. Because it's not something, I mean, we've got a lot of pop punk songs that guys are writing about some dude being shitty to another girl. We have that. we have that. Or about, a girl being shitty, the story so far. Anyway, so, but there's not a lot of female fronted projects in the spotlight, or, touring with those bands, getting on stage and singing a song about an abusive relationship or assault or rape and saying that, hey, this is what this is about. It happened to me. You deserve people in your life who support you and your ability to change is possible, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying there are no other female artists writing about those kind of experiences, because there are plenty. I just had this privilege of having a great team who got me on these tours where I was saying that. So a lot of people who only go to those bigger tours hadn't had that experience. So I think the surprising part was how many people were coming up to me after shows, and I would be at the merch table for 2-3 hours just talking to people about how hearing that song made them feel like they weren't alone, how it inspired them to tell other people that it had happened to them. So that was shocking. This time around, I think I knew people would be really supportive, but I was too ashamed to say anything because I thought I would react differently. Like I thought, I have all this support. I know people are there for me. I know statistically, if this has happened to you once, it's way more likely that it'll happen to you again. And a lot of that is because predators will prey on people who are empathetic and compassionate. So that's one of the statistics there. But I felt like the way I reacted was not this badass persona of, you know, woman scorned that I thought it would be. So I felt like I was disappointing myself and disappointing everybody else. So, and I know that's not true. I understand that's not true. I wasn't ashamed because of what somebody else did to me. I was ashamed of my reaction. And I think that's what it was. It wasn't, yeah, I didn't want sympathy. It wasn't because I was like, I can deal with this myself. It was because I didn't want it to be true. And if nobody else knew and it was just my little thing, then I could just erase it. Shit doesn't work like that. Trauma doesn't work like that. It just builds
Funny
up.
thing about trauma.
Snowballs. Even if you don't realize it, you know, you're yelling at an old lady because she's walking in the crosswalk when you're at a red light. And then you're like, oh, this is not her fault.
Yeah.
Her hat is fine. I'm not offended by her red hat, even though she's wearing it with a green jacket. I'm not offended.
I work with kindergarten and first graders at a school as an adjustment counselor, and it's in a district that's a lot of DCF involvement, or whatever you would call it in your area, but like Department of Children and Families, CPS, whatever. And it's so wild working with kids in that age group and that population that are so heavily traumatized, because you see the way it comes out when they are under some sort of stress or duress, and like they go from like, you know, making choices to not making choices and just reacting and responding to events or setting events or antecedents, and you're just like, holy shit. Like you sit like for like you know, you meet them and for like, they might be new to the school or whatever, and you're just like, for the first 5 days it's just like perfect. I'm like, wow, what a sweet kid, this kid's amazing. And then like they set in and something happens, and like the way that their bodies react and the way that trauma affects your responses, that they're not calculated responses. They're just, you know, obviously trauma responses. And it's fucking wild what it does to you. So I think that it's like trying to explain it or make sense of it is like a very challenging, because I imagine so as an adult too, who's had traumatic experiences where we're set on trying to make sense of the world around us and rationalize our experiences. And it's like to maybe try to set yourself on that path and have things not work out the way that you told yourself they would based on how you respond to the next thing that comes up. It's like, I imagine that's confusing and hard to work through.
Well, one of the things I was talking about in that interview is we put so much emphasis on healing and the process of it, how it's not linear, how it's different for everybody. But we don't really talk about like, okay, healing from a traumatic incident, like I'll obviously just use like sexual assault. We can learn how to like deal with the thoughts we're having, our responses, things that make us feel unsafe, like feeling comfortable, feeling confident again. We can work through all of that stuff as our healing process. But healing doesn't necessarily teach you how to deal with it if it happens again, because a lot of healing is convincing yourself that it won't happen again, which is because you need to believe, you absolutely need to believe, if something like that happened to you, that it was a one-time thing, that you're free
you like
from
have
it.
to believe you're safe. Like it's like life's about convincing. That's why that's why you can drive to your job and not think about death statistics. That's like you just have to believe you're safe in this world.
Yeah. So then when something happens that shows you, oh, you're not, like you're still susceptible to this thing, it's terrifying. And I think that's why I needed to accept the truth I accepted before that, but I don't know. And sometimes being healed is equally as hard as healing, because you see the person that you are now. And if you had been that person before, it would have gone totally, totally differently. You want to hear the last like trauma bomb in the series of like shit things that happened? I didn't talk about this in my other interview. So I decided to start playing music, releasing music, going really, really hard again last year. So I started with a festival. I had a couple other shows booked. So I played a festival last June that I put on, benefit fundraiser, super excited. First time playing my record that came out during the pandemic, all this stuff, saw a lot of old friends. And then a couple weeks later, one of my friends who was at that show, who I'd been friends with for 17 years, died.
Oh my God.
So I went to her I went to her funeral on my ex-boyfriend's birthday and then drove to a family vacation on a beach. And she had 2 kids and she's just amazing, an amazing, amazing person. But she was my friend Laura that died by suicide. She was her other best friend. So the anniversary of that suicide of Laura's was this past May 21st. So I'm driving home from a show and I realize it's 1 a.m. So I pull out my phone and I go to text my friend Rachel that passed away, because that's what I did every year. And then I was like, oh, I can't. After Rachel died, Laura's dad looked at me and said, and then there was one. So I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Why were they all dead when I've tried so many times? And that you can laugh at that. It's a joke. I think that there's a valid reason that I'm still here. And I'm going to die a natural way. And I'm going to do probably a lot of really fucking cool stuff before then. Probably a lot of really stupid stuff too. And I'm excited to see what all of those days look like now. But yeah, that was my last little trauma bomb. And now I put out new music after that, and I have shows coming up, and I have like festival things, and I'm talking to strangers like you guys again. And I think it'll be good. Yay, strangers.
Because it is interesting. One of the things that we had talked about was I had first reached out almost 2 years ago, and when I had finally, but I'd left it. I reach out to a lot of people. Sometimes I do that, I move on. Sometimes I'll follow up, sometimes I'll follow up quite some time later, and then you're like, when I followed up again, it was like years later, almost 2 years later. It was like, yeah, this was like after hearing your story. But one of the things you said was like, it's actually a much better time to do this now. And now listening to your story, it's like, yeah, it probably wasn't the best time for you to want to be doing a bunch of interviews and
oh yeah, well I already was, because Pushback had just come out.
So
you would have been talking to a robot. Like before we hit record, when I was saying, I had a list of things that I had to say, I can talk about this, don't ask about this. If I
what
say
were
this,
some of those
edit it
things?
out.
I'd love that kind of stuff. So you were saying before we recorded that when you're in the industry, there was a list of things that they told you couldn't talk about, or the interviewers couldn't ask about. What were like a few of them that were interesting?
A lot of it was stuff like, upcoming releases, normal stuff like that, where it's like, oh, this will probably come out before we announce this tour, like, or this music video, or it's saying things like that, which is like pretty standard. But I had a label rep remind me that we were moving away from my trauma image.
It's just not working for us.
You wanted to move away from that, so make sure they know that they're not allowed to ask you about that. And I was like, well, I mean, I feel like it's like really prevalent with my career and the fan base, and it is part of my platform. But to be totally honest, they tried to steer me away from anything. I'm going to say this, but I would also prefer not to go past it. I was associated with a couple of people who had allegations come out, who weren't really in my life anymore at that point, but they were like, you can't say anything that will potentially lead someone to those questions, because you're not allowed to talk about that. And that was a big thing where I was like, I would love to talk about that. Not in like a problematic way, not in like a defending anybody way, just in a, hey, this is triggering for me. I have a side in this experience too. Mm-hmm. So if people have a problem with me talking about that I don't really care. But obviously, there's like industry things that you have to do. I also wasn't supposed to talk about how I was almost 30.
You weren't. They didn't want you to talk about your.
Why do they keep doing
what a sex that is like? It's funny. You know what? It's actually heartwarming to know that kind of sexism's still alive and well.
I know.
I love
America. It. God bless.
Like I love it.
And now.
Don't tell anyone that you're almost 30, and stop talking about myocarditis.
Yeah, we need people in their 50. No, okay. I'll move on from.
Yeah, no,
I don't like the direction those jokes were going in.
No, I would like to be. That's honestly one of the big reasons that now it's like, fuck you. There's on the Pandemos, there's a song called Whatever that sounds like this real nice 80s pop song, and at the end of it, it says, fuck you to the people who said that I missed my moment in 2021. I took my story back and someone stole it. And that's like about everything we talked about. But also, some of the people, I worked with some really great industry people, and my trauma responses created situations that it's good we parted ways, because I think it would still be rough to work out my fault, my failures. But my goodness, some of the people that I worked with in this professional music industry, it's so weird to be a fucking product. Like, I'm a person.
Sure, yeah, that's
I know that
insane.
you probably forgot, especially in this conversation, but like, I'm a human who like breathes, and I have skin that has nerves that are attached to me, and I can hear things that people say, and I can see shit that people are doing. But I have a lot of feelings also. Yeah, I'm not just a product. And that's how it is. And like, especially as a solo artist and as a woman, you are a product with an expiration date. And that expiration date either happens when you hit a certain age, or when you decide you're too old to do dance videos on TikTok, or you decide you don't want to shift your entire image by making sure you post 5 selfies a week, 3 of which need to include your whole body.
Yeah,
That's the shit I don't want to do.
Yeah. What is this like? Because it's especially weird considering that like you're an artist, and I don't know. I just feel like if you're a company that brings an artist on board that especially has built like a fan base to date, like you've built that fan base because people are like connecting with who you are and how you're representing yourself. And like, I don't understand this impulse to like, you get like these, suit and tie, maybe not in the record industry, but like these suit and tie people that like, it's like, hey, I'm on the ground here. I see what people respond to and what they don't. Like, I've gotten to this point without you. Like, why are you trying to interject now and tell me how I can like do me better? It just doesn't make sense. It's like, it's compromising like the relationship that you have with your audience if you're not authentic. And it just reminds me of like when I started out in like the industry I'm in, initially like all the old guys were like, you need to wear a tie. Respectable people wear ties, and if you go into a meeting and you don't have a tie on, everybody's just going to look down on you and stuff. You go into these meetings and it's like, nobody here is wearing a tie. I feel ridiculous. I'm doing like hands-ons. I'm working on a car with a tie on like an idiot. Like, this is not the case anymore. Why are you making me do this? And I just don't, it's so ridiculous in that like artistic realm to try to like force and sterilize, a person's image and try to, take control of their branding.
Yeah. I will say I worked with Lindsay Burns, who is she was my creative director for Pushback, and she is the greatest thing that happened to me during that record cycle, because she is amazing. So there are certain things that, if the label wanted like quote unquote sexier pictures or whatever, or like wanted me to do hot girl shit, I guess, which has never been my thing at all. They wanted that. But Lindsay's approach with me was not like, oh, we have to give the label this. It would be, this is what the label wants. Is there, what do you want? Is there a compromise that you're comfortable with? To the extent of me saying, the way I grew up, coming out of abusive relationships, being in abusive or being in relationships where if I posted something like that, like even beach day, swimsuit, top, jeans, whatever, it was always an issue for someone in my life. So it made me really insecure and really ashamed of that stuff. And I remember one day during a photo shoot, Lindsay said, "You're hot. You're fucking hot. You're beautiful. You're pretty. And you're allowed to feel like that. So let's take some pictures that make you feel fucking hot. You don't have to post them if you don't want to, but you deserve to feel like that." And that, especially, from another female that is, I didn't have a lot of close female relationships growing up. So it is the snap your fingers, gas up your girls kind of mentality that I never had. And the photos we ended up taking that day, I still look at them and I'm like, who is she? And it's because I felt confident for the first time in probably 6 years. And that's something I carry with me all the time. Like, even now, if I'm going to like post something on social media, I have moments where I'm like, Lindsay would love this. And it's just like her voice is one that stayed encouraging in my head. And also when I was going through some rough stuff, she was the one, I didn't talk to her about everything, but she hit a point where she was like, is this what you want to do? Because if you don't want to do it, I don't care. I don't fucking care. I love you and I want you to be happy. But if this isn't what you want to do, you don't have to do it. So it was, I don't know. She's an angel. And I think anybody who's ever worked with her, she's a photographer and a creative director that is like a tiny life coach just by fucking existing. I could praise her for days. So Lindsay Burns is amazing. And that is the hill I will die on. Thank you.
Shout out Lindsay Burns.
Shout out Lindsay Burns.
And your brother Ken.
I know we've had you on for a while. I have one more question about your new music and what's going on, and then we can start wrapping up. Unless you have anything you're dying to get off your chest, but no. Yeah. So new album 2023. It seems like, so I know, pandemic made a big shift in what artists could do. Obviously, some of your mental health struggles over the past few years made touring probably also a challenge and putting yourself out there. As far as the capacity, I feel like I saw something where you had talked about maybe in maybe an Instagram post or something about the capacity in which you were touring and what that's like in your level of commitment to being on the road frequently versus when you can, and also that you found a lot of satisfaction in managing this coffee shop that you do. Like where are you at with all of that, and like kind of like gun ho back onto the road, full speed ahead with music versus the life that you've kind of built where you are doing the things that you like in the area you live? Okay,
so I still have I have a lot of foster kittens here right now. I was very tempted to set up there, but it would have, every 5 seconds I would have been like, down, no, or been like, oh, look how cute he is. So I said I'll be professional-ish, I guess.
Handsome Jeffy.
You did get to meet Jeffy. That is one of my partner's cats who has become my son as well, but that is the cat that's like his baby, very, very like big, his baby. Jeffy's got a fat face. The way that I picked him up, I know I'm on a tangent, but if you guys could take a screenshot of that, I think we need that.
That's the thumbnail.
Oh yeah, honestly,
he's a little plumper.
Please post around. Anyways, okay, so you can also edit me talking about Jeffy out if you want.
We won't.
Perfect. That's what we love to hear. But yeah, so I have some foster kittens that I still need to rehome. This is the last batch we're doing. I'm also keeping one of them because he's blind and I'm obsessed with him. I ordered him a harness and a leash today. So, I have those things. But I think I always pushed myself so hard. It wasn't necessarily how often I was touring. It was just that I only saw worth in myself when I was touring. So when I came home, I was so depressed. And it was not just the post-tour blues that went away. I came home and I could hardly function, which is why I started working at coffee shops again, like I did before tour. I found a nice coffee shop in Columbus that I had worked at previously that would just let me work as much as I wanted to when I was home, and then go back on tour. During the pandemic, though, that was really my only option, was going back to those coffee shops. But I went from the one in Columbus back to one I started working at right when I turned 16, which I managed. I helped run it for a couple years, and I came back under the agreement that I was not going to be a manager. I would help with extra stuff that needed done, but I was just there to work, to help during a short period of time. And that was in October of 2020. Now I'm a manager at that shop, and I work almost 40 hours a week. And I kind of just had, I don't know, I think that I sort of was in this like trauma pause, and it was like I was disassociating for 2 years. And then I woke up and was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, what is this? So then it's, picking apart the parts of life here that I settled into because I enjoy them, or like what felt safe because I needed that at the time, and what did I kind of fall backwards into because it was comfortable and I needed comfort. And I think the coffee shop is one of those things. It's the first place I ever played music, at an open mic night when I was 15. And, I booked shows there and gave back to the community that I needed when I was growing up, which is art community in a farm town, basically. But it's time for me to go, or I'm gonna get stuck forever. So I actually just talked to the owner a couple months ago about how I need to start transitioning out. I have some other shows coming up this year that haven't been announced yet. I have some songs I'm working on that are not going to be released as demos, that are actually going to be recorded in a studio, or at least sent to a studio and then back to me and then back to the studio. As far as touring, ideally I would like to tour next spring, but that's also where I accidentally and kind of purposely cut all of my industry ties. So it's a lot of work. It's more work than the first time, because it's harder to come back than it is to start, which most people would probably disagree with that. But I've already projected myself to a lot of people who went to bat for me as someone who's not reliable and who won't do the work, which is the exact opposite of how I was for years and years and years. So I think everybody just thought I got burnout and was done. And I wasn't. I needed a break, and I didn't know how to verbalize that. So now it's building new relationships and starting from the ground up, which I'm actually kind of excited about, because I did get to a point where I would be home and I would look at local lineups for shows and not know anybody. So now I'm like, oh yeah, this show is coming up in Columbus, and like this guy who's in this band also plays in these two bands, and they're really good. And they just started this community art fundraiser thing. So being back in touch feels so good. It makes me feel human again and less producty. But yeah, so that basically we'll manifest it right now. I would like to put out a small EP of something that's kind of special at the end of the year. I would like to release a couple singles that are not related to that for either an EP or full length to come out in spring. So, I mean, the songs I wrote instead of killing myself were literally just, here are demos I recorded. This is how they're recorded. I'm not re-recording anything. This is where I was. This is the story that you missed. This is me filling in the gaps. So maybe if you get it, you'll get it. And now that I have all this off my chest, let's fucking go.
I love that. I'm looking forward to it. I hope I see you some shows pop up in Massachusetts.
Me too. I'm gonna try to get the girls that run the Morbid podcast to come out. That's my goal.
Oh, there you go.
The Morbid podcast.
That's the happening show.
You've never listened to it.
Ooh,
it's a true crime podcast, but they're funny. They're funny. They just started another podcast called The Rewatcher that's been out for a couple months, and they're rewatching every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and giving a run through and talking about it. One of them has seen it, the other one hasn't, and is watching it for the first time. I'm obsessed with that show, to the point where my mom banned it from me when I was in like 5th grade because she thought I was too obsessed with it. I love
Cult
it. So
influences.
a lot of joy in that show. In the musical episode, I'm pretty sure that's why I'm in bands.
I've never seen an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I have thought about recently I've been seeing some bits and pieces of some episodes of Seventh Heaven popping up, and I thought I've never seen an episode of that, but I thought maybe running through that whole series could be filled with entertainment, at least on a personal level.
Doing a podcast running through that series about all of the like problematic fundamentalist aspects of that would not hold up if they came out in a TV show today would be interesting.
Yeah, there's insane. I mean, I keep seeing all these like insane plot lines, and like the ultra drama revolving around inconsequential things is incredible.
Yeah,
that's the
I just
Christian
watched it
community
because I
in a
thought the
nutshell.
oldest sister was hot. So
Jessica
probably
Biel.
not. But
Is that who it was?
specifically, yes. But specifically in that series, I was like, she's hot. And outside of that, it was like, she's a cool girl. I would like to hang out with her. But in that one, I was like, why is she hot? I think it's because in my like little child, not out of the closet gay brain, I think I was just like, she's in a really conservative Christian family. I'm not allowed to like her.
That's the taboo element. It's always the taboo element.
Yeah.
The disequilibrium and desire, the way that those. Anyway.
Jessica Biel.
I got a little Woody for Tucker Carlson myself.
That's who you. That's where like
that little Tucker pomp. Oh man,
that face. You like that confused schoolboy face.
Exactly. Just want to
Tucker
feel it.
Carlson sounds like an action, like a slang term for doing something. It doesn't sound like a name.
It sounds like a made-up
I
country
came in
stage
hot
name.
so that I could Tucker Carlson, and you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. That's all it sounds like to me.
Gave him the old Tucker Carlson.
It's
Yeah.
it's his name is basically Cleveland Steamer.
I think we need to define what like the Tucker Carlson is. Like if you say, yeah, Tucker Carlson, we have to make something up. It has to be good, and we need to get it on Urban Dictionary, or this entire conversation we've had,
erased.
it's a failure. We have failed.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking.
I want it to be something that you don't feel comfortable putting on your podcast. We'll just put it on Urban Dictionary, and then people who get invested in this can just check back once a week. And then when it finally pops up, they'll be like, oh shit, that's where they went? That is not the direction. Oh, wow. That.
Everything I can think of is just over the top gross.
Exactly.
That's it. It's a weird one to brainstorm because it takes a lot of bad ideas to get to the right one, and those bad ideas might put you on a watch list somewhere. So I think we should just
goals.
Just wait for the final product.
I would love it to be somebody else holding me back from doing things. So put me on a watch list so I can finally say it's not my fault.
Man.
Kelsey, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your story. This has been great.
Thanks for having me at a more opportune time instead of talking to a robot version of myself a couple years ago. I appreciate you guys listening to me spew all of this.
Well, it feels like just like you spelled out some of your experiences, I'm going to chalk this one up to divine providence and it working out this way.
I'll take it. Maybe they'll talk about it at church on Sunday. We'll see.
Yeah,
I had a sermon I was going to give, but I feel like there's somebody here today who needs to talk about a podcast they just did. It was a little callback earlier when I was in 6th grade. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to say thanks, and then I'm going to stop talking. So thank you.
Oh, God. I just had a thought. Like, remember when they used to in church, they would be like, they would open up the floor and just be like, does anybody have something, a blessing that they want to share? Like, how many of those in the last, 10 years has started with, I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and oh, God, I jumped through a stained glass window if I heard that.
That's
you should
probably
just do that regardless. Sorry, I said I was going to shut up.
That's how all of them would start. Yes, that's now. It used to be I was listening to AM radio or Rush Limbaugh, but things have changed.
Earlier this week, Gary V really laid something on my heart, and I thought I'd share.
All right.
Listening to Rush Limbaugh, my dad's Cadillac growing up was like another point of trauma that I should probably unpack in an upcoming therapy session. Okay, that's the last thing I'm going to say because it is relatable to plenty, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a thread that everyone from our generation shares. El Rushbo. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.